This episode is sponsored in part by PTZ Optics. Why need a cameraman when you can just do it yourself? Visit ptzoptics.com for more information. Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Broadcast Now, the show that talks about everything that has to do with live video and sometimes other things. Live streaming, doesn't matter. We'll try to cover it here the best that we possibly can. Joining me as always, we've got Mr. Marty McPadden from podjam.tv. Welcome.
Hey, sir. How are you?
I am doing very well here. Got everything switched around, so hopefully audio is good out there for everybody. I appreciate the feedback that we got during the countdown timer, so that's always good.
You got the new setup today, so.
Indeed. So we also have the man, the myth, and the legend, Mr. Greg Terry from YouTube.com.
You know, when you make a promise, you have to follow through with it. And even in pre-show prep time, I did not even drop this on the guys. But last week, 7 days ago, I made a promise that this week I would have a shower curtain behind me so that I could equal my level of streaming ability to that of Marty McPadden, the epic legend. So, folks, here it is. I've got the shower curtain ready to go. The rubber duckies are here. And as soon as the stream's over, I absolutely will be taking a shower. So, rubber duckies, let's go, baby.
That's phenomenal.
We also,
I have no words. I have no words for this. So.
That's funny. We also have the infamous Emmy Award winner, Jeffrey Fitzgerald from jeffandhighdef.tv. Welcome, sir.
Hey, I'm just here for the cookies, right? You said Chick-fil-A cookies, I think, right?
You have to have a shower curtain too, right? I mean, I think they're upstaging us. I don't have a shower curtain here. I think I need to get one.
Give me a week. I'll come up with something. But that was very creative. I have to say, that was really creative.
I like it. I like it. So, guys, we got a really interesting topic. You probably saw it right below in the lower third. It's the little things. And, Greg, you kind of wanted to get this kicked off with your rubber duckies.
Yeah, I'll be happy to get it kicked off. This is going to be an awesome conversation tonight. But so Stephen and I were talking, you know, not only do we broadcast together, but we're personal friends, as I'm also honored to be able to become personal friends with Marty McPadden and Jeff Fitzgerald. But we were talking a few days ago. I've been struggling with something on my personal stream that I could not solve. And it may be nothing in your mind or in your experience. Maybe it's something that's insignificant, but for me as a streamer, it was bothering me. So basically in my studio setup, I've got monitors everywhere and I run through vMix, and my vMix monitor is to my left over here. But for some reason, for weeks, I was trying to get a display problem from behind my vMix. And honestly, it was bugging me. So I would call Steven and he would be doing something and he'd call me back and I say, Steven, I cannot full screen my vMix. My display is messed up. I said, it does not affect my stream. Everything's perfect. My machines are running great. I said, but when I'm live and I'm processing content, and as a self-producer, my main goal is to have a nice experience, but also get my information across and have an enjoyable time with my community. It just bugs me as I cut my eye over there that A, my vMix is not fully expanded to the monitor, and B, I have no idea where that display is coming from behind my vMix. Steven said, okay, let's figure it out. He called me, we FaceTime, we're videoing back and forth. And I'm showing him camera and we're looking and all this jazz. And finally, we figure it out. Well, Steven figured it out. And honestly, it was a 1 second fix, one toggle button, wrong place. But it was the little thing that was holding me back from like peace in my mind. This is why I think it's a great topic to talk about. So we're going to talk about tonight successes with little things, and we're going to talk about failures with little things, because ultimately, if anything is holding you back from broadcasting with your mind clear, in peace up here, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle for you. So that's where we're going to start it. That's where the idea from tonight came. And I can tell you right now, vMix is full screen and my heart is happy.
Jeff, since you're kind of the the passerby here and for a while, why don't you get us kicked off? They haven't heard from you in a while.
Well, I'll give you a story about the little things, right? I mean, the way I define a little thing is something that you think you've already got figured out, or you think it's already working, but you haven't checked before you go live. This transcends live streaming. This goes way back to 1985 when I first got into the wedding videography field. And at that time, video cameras looked like a camcorder, but they weren't. They were their own camera with a nice little wire that went into a square box. It was a VHS, Super VHS video recorder. And my little thing was that in taking on some freelance work with a mentor actually who helped train me, I didn't know that different brands had different polarity settings, which meant that when I would hit record on my Canon, the Canon recorder would say, hey, I need to start recording. Well, big wedding up in Arlington. It was a Marine family. And I was given a recorder by my mentor that was a Panasonic. I had my Canon VC20 camera and plugged it in. The ceremony was beautiful because I hit record and play to get everything. At the reception, plugging it in, putting it on my shoulder, and I start walking around, everything's reversed, and I didn't know it because of one little switch. I didn't move from plus to minus. So this is what the reception looked like on the videotape. It was basically everything flying around like you can imagine, and you hear things like, hey, we're going to get ready for the best man toast. Boom, and you see that rainbow like edit in the VHS, and you hear, that was the most awesome toast I've ever heard in my life. And then it was like the next thing, right? The wedding, the dance is going to happen, and then you would see another edit where I'd hit the button thinking I'm recording, and it was like, oh my God, that they'll remember that forever. Well, you can imagine that little thing became a very, very big thing, and I have never forgot that. But little things are hard to spot because I don't think it's so much that they're little, it's that we assume they're little, when in reality, if we're not going down a checklist full scale every time, we're going to get hit somewhere.
Marty, what about you? What's a time where you were like, oh man?
Well, Jeff just served it up pretty well. He just talked about checklists and checking everything. I'll tell you a story. Now, I wasn't directly involved in this, luckily, but I know the person that was. No names here, but this dates back to my ESPN days. A number of years ago, this has got to be maybe 10 or 15 years ago. It was when ESPN first got the early rounds of the Masters golf tournament. And for people familiar with golf, they know that that's one of the four majors. It's the first major of the year. Very important tournament. They have very specific rules for TV coverage there. And ESPN getting those early rounds was a huge deal for them. And so all the big bosses were very involved in the broadcast. We're now, okay, we got to make sure this is nailed down and make sure that nothing goes wrong. It has to be perfect. There is no excuse. So obviously we went through a lot of planning, and a lot of the planning and production, besides what's going on in the remote, are what if something goes wrong? Do we have backup systems? So part of it is, since we're bringing that feed in, usually we'll have redundant satellite feeds or fiber feeds that bring in the event from remote. And so normally what happens is they go through transmission, they get tested. We know what and transmission assigns a primary feed and a backup feed. And the AD or associate director in master control that's kind of directing the traffic will work with master control, work with remote, and say, okay, testing this, is this good? And also with transmission, and saying, okay, this is the primary feed, looks good, everything's working well, and here's the backup feed, looks good, everything's working well, and identify which one. So we take the primary feed, and in case something happens, say a line gets cut or whatever, you have everything set up where you have the secondary feed in a switcher position, and it's literally just a matter of taking it live to air. So there's no delay. So in theory, it should be a hot switch over, and if the AD is paying attention and everything is tested properly and everybody knows where they need to be, it's an easy thing. In this particular case, I don't know what happened to master control. They didn't do the full test there was some miscommunication with transmission. They did the primary feed, and that was working fine. And something happened in the backup feed where there was a miscommunication whether that which feed was which, and that was really the issue. Is they mixed up where they thought in mass control the secondary feed was primary and primary secondary. Okay, so normally both feeds are showing the same program feed. It's showing the main program feed, but in this case, for whatever reason, when they went to air, the secondary feed was showing something else, and so they took it there, and because they had the wires crossed, they took the wrong feed to air. All the big bosses were there, and it just was very, very embarrassing, and they took the wrong feed. Now, this was, I think, the mistake. I think it was maybe a maximum of 10 seconds on air, and 10 seconds in TV is an eternity, especially when you have everybody sitting in back of you, all the big bosses, and the Masters tournament is looking at, okay, what's this ESPN we're giving them earlier? Are they going to screw it up? Sure enough, he screwed it up, and it really comes down to a little thing, making sure that you actually go through your checklist, as Jeff was mentioning, and it's so easy to blow it off, right? Oh, it's nothing going to happen. Oh, I just communicated something. No, it's literally, and 9 times out of 10, you never take that secondary feed. Everything goes right 99% of the time. I've been in control. It's that 1%, and unfortunately, this 1% was a huge event for ESPN, and so again, that little thing of making sure that everything was set, double checking, is this the right feed? Is this a secondary feed? Avoids, and then you're on top of things. Just like, guys, when we do this show, we're in, and Steven gets us set, we're in a half hour before. And lots of times everything's going well. We're just kind of chit-chatting a little bit. But sometimes something doesn't go right. And that's why we're able to hit the air right at the top of the hour. Same thing happens at the network level. But yeah, just making sure you dot the I's, cross the T's, and that one bit us big time, and it would happen to be a huge event. So it's a little thing.
I'm going to talk about an issue that I had, but then, Greg, I want you to kind of go into what the network said to you the other day about going live, because this is why preparedness is always key. I had an issue, which Marty, Jeff, maybe Greg, maybe you knew about it. I had an HDMI cable that goes to one of my program preview monitors that are sitting in front of me here. It was going bad for a while. It would flicker, it would shut off, it would, and I'm like, I have it run through the ceiling. So all during the shows, I used to sit there and I'd adjust it. You guys would be talking, whoever's talking, I'd get up, I'd go adjust it, and it'd look like, oh, it's working. I'd get through the show, it was perfect. Next show, we'd sit down, it would do it again. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to let it go. I'm just going to go with it. Until the one day, we were doing a Friday show, and I lost my monitor. Now, it might not sound like a bad thing because I've got a monitor off to my side in the user interface, but I'm used to looking straight ahead at my camera, or if I'm on that camera, looking at that camera and that monitor, and I was lost the whole show. And the whole time, I'm trying to host the show with the other guys, and I'm thinking, what can I do to fix this in between? If somebody talks, can I get up and do this? And it took away from the content, and it took, like, I found myself stuttering at different times. I couldn't keep up with the conversation because all I kept thinking about was that stupid HDMI cable, which I knew what it was. I knew it was bad. So while I was on the show, I ordered from Amazon a brand new HDMI cable so it would be here the next day. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to run that thing. And I left the other one up there because the way it's routed, it's too much to try to tear it out. But I reran the new one in a way that I could take it out if something happens to it. But once I did that, it fixed the problem. And it was one of the things that I kind of skimped on a little bit when I built the studio here after we moved. There was a few cables that I didn't buy new, which I should have, but, budget and everything. So that was one of the things that really, oh man, drove me nuts doing a show and having to keep that in the back of your mind. You're constantly thinking, what's going to go wrong, or how can I fix that? Greg?
Yeah, so let's break it down even to the simple level. We've all shared our little stories, and I had something actually happen this week that Stephen was referring to. But in my prior life and also my current life, you may or may not know this, but I'm a musician as well, and I'm also a preacher. I actually travel the world and speak at different events, different training events, different crusade events. That's what I do. I'm a speaker, and even on that speaker level, as a communicator, or if you are watching this and you are a self-producing streamer, the greatest thing you can do is pay attention to the small details, the little things. For example, for my personal streams, um, as a self-producer, I trust nobody and I trust nothing. Just because I saved the vmix file and now I've reopened it, I still don't trust it. Windows could update, vmix, of course I never update on stream day, but regardless, anything can happen. A shortcut can get cut off. So every day that I stream, I do not let the small things catch me, even though I'm 100% prepared for my stream, comfortable. Right before I go online, I still test every shortcut, every activator, every button. I also go into my bathroom next to my studio. I look in the mirror. I make sure there's nothing in my teeth. I make sure my hair is looking good. Make sure my shirt's right. Every little thing. Why is that important? Because it only takes a little thing to get you distracted. And once you're distracted, you're off. You have to be able to focus. I can remember speaking at a large event a few years ago. And as I was preparing to speak, there was literally thousands of people at this event. I walk on the stage to speak, and I just begin my deal, and there's this lady sitting on the front row, and she's doing this. And I'm looking at her. I said, "Listen, lady, I'm preaching here. What's going on? Why are you down there shaking your hands?" And I just ignore her. She keeps going like this. And I finally acknowledge her, with your eyes, and she goes, I said, "What?" Folks, I'm standing in front of thousands of people, and I look down, and my zipper is down, and my shirt is coming through it. So it's the little things that you absolutely must pay attention to. Now, why should you be masters of those? What Stephen is referring to, and I called him on Tuesday night, and I was very proud. So I'm syndicated on Integrity Television, and on Tuesdays, they run me on a 30-minute delay. There's another live program that runs from 8 to 9, and I'm just talking Eastern Standard Time, but it doesn't matter. And then I start at 8:30. They put me on a 30-minute delay, and then I roll in and am patched in at 9 o'clock. And for them, I go to 9 to 10, even though I'm 8:30 to 9:30. On Fridays, I'm straight live, 8:30 to 9:30. So every Tuesday and Friday, we do our ping test. I get a call from the engineer in California, and he says, "Okay, Greg, it's time for the ping test." On Tuesday, it was 7 seconds delay. It could be a 9 second, 6 second, 11 second, whatever it may be. Well, on Tuesday of this week, I received a phone call, and the phone call was at 8:24 p.m. And I saw it was Integrity Television. And I looked down at my phone. You have to understand, I am literally 30 seconds from rolling my countdown. But I'm locked and loaded. I'm strapped in the seat. Everything's ready to go. Everything's tested. They call me, and they go, "Greg, can you go live with us at 8:30? I said, "Well, that's not really going to change what I'm going to do." He goes, No. We're going to have you live. We need a ping test right now. We need to make sure the delay, and we need your feed, because the program that's supposed to be rolling now, they're having a problem in Dallas, and we're not going to have their feed. We need you at 8:30. I said, "No problem. I'm fully prepared. I can, through vmix, I can send and start streams and do all this wonderful stuff. I'm a vmix fan." I sent them a ping test. They messaged me back, 7 seconds. So during all of that countdown, I had to make sure I sent them the stream at the exact moment in time for perfection. We nailed it, hit it out of the park. And that is because in that case, I was a master of the small things. It didn't mess me up. It didn't throw me off. Yes, there was pressure. Yes, there was a time crunch. Yes, I had to nail it. I know my software, even the little things. So when the stream was over, I called Steve and I said, man, you taught me well, because they put the whammy on me tonight and said they need my feed perfectly spot on. And we hit it out of the park. So I was just very thankful for him, teaching me the ins and outs. It was no problem. I hope they don't do it anymore in the future, though.
Stress is good. I mean,
It is good.
Keeps you on track. I don't know, Jeff, Marty, do you guys work good under that kind of pressure? I mean, I personally do.
Greg brought up some really good points there. Kind of dovetails with my master's story, and he had a very similar situation. The reason why, the reason why Greg was able to react that quickly is he had all the little things covered. He had gone through his checklist. He was ready to go. And that's another reason why that's important to really pay attention to little things, because being ready for that curveball, which can come at any time. And in Greg's case, that came there where they were saying, wait, the show that's normally in that time slot having trouble with their transmission, he's going to feed on delay anyways, but he can just be moved up. Greg's ready to go, and he can react to that curveball because he knows every other system, all the little things are taken care of, and then he has enough bandwidth to deal with the curveball. Same thing with you, Stephen, with this show and all the shows that you do. Getting people ready. Whenever I work with clients or what, it's always getting on early. When I worked at ESPN, you get in that. It was always 30 minutes minimum in the control room. The team would be in place, and even if we twiddled our thumbs for 20 minutes, doesn't matter. Everybody knows that we're ready to go. And then if a curveball happens in the few minutes leading to air, everybody has the bandwidth to be able to react to that, because invariably something happens at the worst possible time. If you're still messing around with your settings, or you're not sure that you have everything covered and you're doing things at the last minute, I see this especially with beginner live streamers where, they're maybe using a cloud system, and I don't think they really have the appreciation for, and normally 9 times in 10, everything works. The tools are pretty good now. The software's good. The cloud services are good. But then they get rocked by one little curveball, and it didn't have to be that way. Or they're not able to like, say if a guest has trouble joining, are they ready because they have everything covered? Are they ready to react? I mean, I don't. I think all you guys can relate to this. When you're doing a show, whether it's pre-taped or whether it's live, I'm always like, it's like I'm the most nervous one in the bunch if I'm producing it, because I know what can happen. The guest or the client has no idea, especially if they're not in the production, and you just try to make it look easy, but you have to be ready to react, and even if you're and people have to realize that it comes with the territory. If you're just sitting there for 15 minutes, so be it. That's a gift. It gives you more time. Like when we're chit-chatting before the show, it just gives us more time to prepare. It's good. Don't just build that into your schedule. Make sure you're ready to go. But yeah, Greg's story reminded me of that. It's like very much like the Masters, where, curveball, and he's ready to go, and the audience knows either way. It's totally smooth for the audience. They think it's easy, and he's and everything goes smoothly because of the preparation and because you're ready to go.
You have to be prepared. Jeff?
Yep.
You definitely have to be prepared. Marty, I love what you were talking about, and it's funny because hearing you talk about these things makes me even more believe that the news journalist contributor we see now on all the Sunday morning shows that are never part of any story, it's just other journalists, that came about because they got used to not planning ahead, and people would be in LA traffic or New York traffic. I know with my show, DC traffic, and your guy's like, hey, he's 20 minutes from getting in the studio. Hey, pull that guy in and he can talk about it. And, so it's that kind of thing. But we don't have that particular ability a lot of times, and so it's really important to know where you're going to go with something. And, it's funny, guys, you all remember that Laurel versus Yanny thing that was happening, that trend on the internet here a couple years ago. I think that actually applies to what we're talking about today. And here's why. I don't know whether or not you all heard Laurel or Yanni. I heard Laurel. Other people hear Yanni. There's a lot of videos these days on YouTube, TikTok, and other places where they'll have a phrase on a screen, two phrases, and depending on which one you're looking at, you're going to hear the one that you're looking at, and it's the weirdest thing. And so what happens when you get derailed the way everybody's talking about here or distracted, the whole world becomes a postage stamp, and literally all you're thinking about is that, and all the work for the days ahead, the hours, and all those other things just go by the wayside, and now you're in damage control, and that doesn't have to really be that way. You know, one of the things I love, and Greg, I believe you're a pilot. One of the things I love about pilots, you watch somebody in a 737 or an A320, when they're checking switches, they're literally touching those switches. They're making sure they're set, not just in verbal, yeah, I got it. It's like, okay, we know that the APU is not, you know, where it needs to be. It's set right, you know, that kind of thing. And so if you're running a little bit more of an advanced live stream where you're running vmix like, you know, we do here, and you've got videos you're going to play, don't assume that because you put them in there 3 days ago that they're still working. You may have made a change to your hard drive or something where now it can't find it, or some other weird thing might go on. Make sure that you go through and just touch everything. Don't make it a big deal where that becomes the primary focus of what you're doing. But I think if you, number one, can rule out all the things it could be. Now when there's something, I love what, Marty, the way you put that, that you've got the bandwidth to deal with the curveball. That is so awesome to hear it that way, because that's exactly what it is that now you're ruling out a lot of things ahead of time. Now you can deal with the problem when it happens, and you can roll it off your shoulder, make it look like anything you want, because the truth is the audience doesn't know what the plan is. So if you gracefully, you know, say, hey, we've got John coming up, and John says, hey, it's going to be 10 more minutes. You say, John coming up in the next segment, right? And then you do something else, and you just flip with it and roll with it. And that's kind of the beauty and magic of, you know, behind the scenes TV and live streaming.
Well, and I think that's why, too, you know, we talked about this last week about not implementing new gear right away. And I think that's something you have to take care of the little things. Like in my case, this week, I was working on the new setup, the new gear, getting it implemented, going through the little checklist things like audio delay. You know, it's not just about getting your graphics and everything in there from shows and, you know, your other minute details, but things that could make or break your show, audio sync delay, and like you said, just because you put your videos in there, you want to make sure that they play, right? You want to make sure, like I have macros set up so it kills my audio, our audio, and then it turns it back on when the videos are done playing. Things like that, you have to take the time and go through the steps. And in my case, I'm sad to say, I don't have it written out as a list. It's in my head. And usually over the days, and I start messing with it, I actually do mock shows, as sad as that sounds, because I have to, especially with the new changes, I have to reconfigure my muscle memory because things aren't in the same position that they were before. Not necessarily a bad thing. It keeps you sharp and keeps you on your toes, but you're never going to know if things are working unless you do it. Like Greg was saying before, he prepares ahead of time. He's ready to go, even if he's just sitting there, just decompressing.
Steve, I think it's worth pointing out too that, you know, the show we're doing here right now, I mean, all of us do this in our own different forms, but you're not only on camera talent, you're not leading not only leading a conversation, but you're actually the one hitting one of 200 buttons in front of you.
Yep.
And so you're right. It's like playing music. You know, what's the old saying? Don't play it until you get it. It's play it until you can't get it wrong. And that's the difference between somebody who's going to be pretty good at doing their live show or something along those lines to getting it down to where there's no problems. And I can speak to that. You know, I have my own Facebook group. I was doing some shows really primarily just for introducing some of the people in the group to other folks. And I had audio issues this year because I bought a digital, a Behringer X32 that I love, but it is literally like LAX when I had a small regional airport before. I had a Mackie for 14 years. And the learning curve for me seemed like it made sense. All on paper, it looked like it worked. Even at one point, 2 or 3 minutes before we went live, it was working perfectly. But something had changed. I had done something, and you'd have audio trouble. And it's one of those things where I had learned how to do it, but I had not learned how to get it to the point where there's no problem. And that's still a journey, by the way, right? So you're right. When you get in and you practice and you just work through those bugs, that's why it's great to have places, you know, like the green room. If you want to, you know, throw a live stream up or just say, hey, can anybody hear my audio or my video? That's what the whole purpose of it's for. But whatever you got to do, practice in such a way that you kind of really rule out where those problems could be, because if you don't, they're going to come visit.
Yeah, and don't
Stephen, what is the rating of this show?
the rating of the show.
Yeah.
It's
Am I
it
allowed to use 4-letter words?
depends
Oh
what kind
boy.
of four-letter word you're gonna use.
Okay, so
But you're yeah.
here's the problem with small things and all the things that Jeff's been discussing, Marty's been discussing, and Stephen and myself. Here's the bottom line. It's a 4-letter word. It's called lazy.
Mm,
It's an ugly word when you are wanting to be in this type of industry. You cannot be lazy and just hope everything's going to work out. I posted a picture, and Jeff was just talking about his Facebook group called Jeff and High Def. What is it? The Digital Green Room.
Digital Green Room.
And
Yep.
exactly. And it's that place to grow together. It's a wonderful Facebook group that Jeff has there. I posted a picture in there a couple of weeks ago, and it was a picture of my studio setup, all the monitors, everything, all the lights on, everything ready to go. And in my multi-view, there was a countdown clock, and it said 2 hours and 16 minutes, 30 some seconds. And I put the caption with that picture that said this: there's no better feeling when you're 100% ready to go for your broadcast and the clock says 2 hours and 16 minutes until fire time.
Yep.
And I
Yes.
said, now I can go downstairs, getting my recliner, watch an episode of Criminal Minds, get fully tortured by Dr. Reed, and I'm ready to stream. And even when it was 100% ready and I'm by myself producing, everything's right here, I was still in my chair 30 minutes before go time, and I'm just sitting here clearing my mind. I triple checked again that everything's ready to go, and I'm going to be honest with you, that night was one of the greatest streams I've ever had because everything flowed seamlessly. But here's the deal: you have a schedule and you are streaming or you're creating videos and you lay out your storyboard, you lay out your timeline, the best thing you can do for yourself is not be a lazy broadcaster. It's that simple. That's the 4-letter word. We're still G-rated. I don't use ugly words.
I
Well, I'll tell you, I think it may be a couple more letters there too, because I think the word routine falls into that very well as well. It's either or. You can fall into, hey, I got it, or you can be like, nah, I don't want to deal with it, and you,
Cruise
either way, you're
control.
well, what about like what I like to do? Like now that I've got everything dialed in, I like to spend time just doing things here in the studio because then it triggers me to say, you know what? I've always wanted to do this and I never had time to do it. Now's the time that I want to implement this because it's going to make my job that much easier instead of pressing 50 buttons, as Jeff alluded to. Now I can press one and have it do everything that I wanted to do. Do you guys ever find yourself doing that and changing things, or is it tough to change things because of you might forget?
Well, I'll say this. I think that's a good approach, and I'll use an analogy of building a house. So, and Stephen, you're a good example of this. Is the reason why everything works in your studio, and you have a ton of different layers, and during your well over 10, 12, 15 years of live streaming and video, you started from the very beginning just with a laptop, and now look at you have multiple layers and you have all these things going, all these tools. But the key is you've built over the years a solid foundation. So we know when you're building a house or you have a house, the foundation is everything, because that's what holds the house up. And if you have a defect in the foundation and something is cracked, chances are that if you have a failure there, the whole house comes down and nothing works at all from there. And so the foundation is the simple foundational things, basic steps that you have building a show or building your production out. And then what Stephen was mentioning, maybe he's looking to add one feature. You're not changing the entire workflow. You get very comfortable and very familiar with your workflow. and then you certainly can build on. So you may build on an addition, or you may build on, get new siding, or change the roof out, or whatever it is. But you're adding on improvements along the way. Doesn't affect the foundation. The foundation's still there, and you can always build it on, test it well, and then bring it into production. So there's different steps to it. So you have rehearsal. The other thing you mentioned, Stephen, I think that was very, very important, and you kind of glossed over it, and I think that was one of the most important things any one of us said all show here, is whenever you roll out a new show, you tend, and we've talked about this in the past, you do mock shows. And especially when you would work with other people, maybe you're producing the show for them and you have other hosts and guests, and you'd always approach people and say, look, we're going to do 10, 12, 20 show until you're comfortable, and you're going to run through these shows dress rehearsal. And I can tell you, at the highest levels, that's when you bring out a new show, that's what you do. You meet with the production team. You're actually literally produce dress rehearsal shows multiple times with the same crew until you get it down to where you're confident that this is good enough to put on air and for your audience. And I can't overemphasize that enough. And people see that as little things. I see that with live streamers all the time, where the urge is to get out there and just push the button and go live. And while there's a place for that, it's like it's hard to expect the best results. You may get lucky, and the tools today are very, very robust, very good. The cloud tools that a lot of beginners use are very good. And 9 times out of 10, they may work flawlessly. You may get lucky and whatever, it may go well. But if you really don't know what's going on, and maybe you have an important interview, and you don't take that extra time to really get familiar with build out the foundation and really understand what's going on, one little thing happens, it throws you, especially if you're, and multiple people tonight have said it, it throws you off. And especially for a lot of the people watching the show, a lot of us are one-man bands. And if you get thrown off, the whole show's dead, and it's very hard to recover. So doing those mock, that I think is really, really important. Doing those mock shows, rehearsing it through, knowing what's going on. It seems like a small thing, and the other thing I think people get confused about with that kind of thing is it's something that nobody else sees.
Right.
And I've talked about the 90-10 rule all the time. It's the 90% that nobody sees, but you see it, and you know what's going on, and you're familiar with your workflow. It's to make that 10% flawless and really, and again, it's not a guarantee that a mistake won't happen, but the idea is to mitigate that. And again, the other thing is the audience will perceive that as you're making it look easy. I always marvel at what Steven does as a self-producer when he does this show, when he does the Retro Buzz, and any other show that he does. Don't get confused. He makes it look easy because, when you're a professional and you really got it down, you got the pound, it's supposed to appear that way. That's kind of the goal, is to make it look easy. But if you're a producer, you're just getting into this, it's not easy. Don't get confused, and don't think, you may get lucky pushing the button, but, there's been multiple stories tonight, but it's that one time. And again, you may have an important guest, and at one time that maybe someone that can, that you might want to work with sees your stuff.
Yep.
It's like, man, it's so preventable, and it's like, why, and I'm not talking about stuff that happens beyond your control, but take care of the stuff that's really preventable, and that's going to be doing the hard work and doing the stuff that nobody sees.
But even Marty, like when we incorporated the new gear this week, like my first thing was to get everything in and make sure it worked with my existing setup, right? All the monitors turned on, they were aligned properly, because in Windows you have to set up certain monitors to be in certain orders. Well, what was the first thing I did after that? I called you and I said, hey, can you jump on the neural net system? I said, I want to test this. Now, to the common person in here is like, well, why did you have to test that? You didn't change anything with that. When you're playing it around in a rack, and you guys can attest when you're setting up equipment, things happen. You could accidentally bump a wire. You could pull a wire out. You could pull out an audio cable or audio interface or USB cable, however you have it wired up. And I said, Marty, jump on tell me if you hear any noise. Do you hear, we're conversing. It worked. So I knew I was good. I knew that that part of it was good. We were ready to rock and roll. The rest of it was just dialing in, adding, the title names and things like that. Just because you add something, go through everything. I know it sounds mundane. It sounds like it's a lot of work. Going back to Greg's lazy, his 4-letter word. Don't be lazy. Go through everything. Anytime you mess with anything, check everything. I mean, it's that small extra step that'll take you the extra mile. Greg, you wanted to jump in there.
Before Greg, I'll add something else. Don't assume, and you all know after that what happens. But don't assume, don't assume, like what Stephen was just saying. You may think that you haven't changed anything, but I know Stephen, like when you do your show, you go through the same mental checklist. I mean, you've done it so many times, you don't have to have it written down, but you still go through the same thing, and it may seem redundant. We used to do it when I worked at ESPN, and when I was an AD in the control room, we go through the same checklist every single time, same timing, same whatever. 99.9% of the time, it was routine. It's that 1/10 of 1% time that I'm glad I went through this. I found something that's going to prevent the show from going on air, or some problem that normally isn't there. Don't think it's a waste of time. You got to just get in the habit of going through it. And that's just how, if you want to, again, if you're starting out in this and you want to strive to be at the top of your game and really be professional, and I'm not saying overnight, but really strive to get to that level, this is part of it. And again, and this is what I try to explain to clients all the time. They don't really understand. It's like they think, oh, you're being too redundant or you're being overly cautious. No, this is what we do.
There's never anything wrong with over communicating, over practicing, these things. And I'll throw a curveball to you guys now too, because we've talked all about technology up until now, but the same things apply for your content. If you're interviewing somebody and you've not done a pre-interview, and there's a lot of debate about whether there's value in that, because sometimes you get all the good information out before it was recorded, and there's pretty much nothing left to talk about, in some ways when you do it live. But if you haven't really understood who your guest is, you may get somebody that every question you ask them, it's a yes or no, and there's no follow-up, and you find yourself having to say, hey, will you elaborate a little bit? And so the same rules apply, whether it's the checklist, which I think we've done a good job of making a case for that, and also the muscle memory, which is what Steve was talking about. Those two things are really critical. But the other thing is, the body of the show, what exactly are you trying to communicate? What is that message, that greater vision for what you want that episode to do? At the end of it, what do you want people to think? How do you want them to respond in a lot of ways, right? What's that call to action, if there is one? And I think those same rules apply across the board here, guys, don't you think?
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at it maybe this way, and this will kind of launch off what Jeff was just sharing and what Marty was sharing. So I have a question for you. Why on earth are you streaming? Why are you wanting to be a broadcaster? If you are doing it just to see yourself and you want to do that, then do not buy all this equipment. Just take your phone, flip it around, put it on a stand, talk into it, and then watch videos of yourself. But I think where Marty and Jeff are both trying to get us to is this. Do you have an end goal in place? Do you really want to grow? Do you want to grow an audience? Do you have something that is a part of your life message or something that you're really wanting to get across and you desire to grow an audience? Of course, the answer is yes. And there are many of you in here that ultimately in the long term, you want to get that audience and experience to a level where you can actually monetize it in the future and make a return on your investment and your hard work and your labor. So that brings into call what Marty was sharing as far as making sure that everything is ready on the technical side, the practical side, going over step by step. Then Jeff's talking about the content side equally. is important and necessary, guest preparation. It's the small things. So my question for you is, where do you discover the small things? That's the question. Where do you discover the small things? It's very simple for me. You actually discover the small things not during non-stream moments, but you actually discover the small things during the stream, during the experience. That's why, Stephen was talking about just a few minutes ago how that once he's ready to go on a stream, he immediately starts working in his studio on other things. I can absolutely witness this. When I was speaking for his company at an event in May, he was producing it for me. So I actually drove over to Ohio and I went to his studio, and I can report my seat is now clear again, but he produced everything for me and we were ready to go. I think, Stephen, it was at least 4 hours prior to my go time. We were 100% tested, ready to go. And then literally I watched Stephen just start working around his studio because, this is an idea here. This is an idea here. And we're looking at different things.
Just to interrupt you real
we're
quick,
ready to go.
the reason I did do that, and with you speaking, when you're dealing with other speakers, the same thing that happened to you Thursday night, I was waiting in case Paul sent me a text that said, hey, somebody's having technical difficulties, because he knows how I am. Can Greg go now? That's why I do that. So go ahead. I didn't mean there, but I wanted to put that in there.
No, you didn't interrupt me. It's perfect, but that's the point. Now, I want to really tag off of what Marty said a moment ago and Jeff said. So my question I rolled for you tonight was, where do you discover the small things? That's during your stream. So what do you do? Let me give you my personal tip of the night and my personal example. Right beside me while I'm streaming, you can't see it, but it's below my hands. There is a pen and a little sticky notepad. And while I am streaming, if I see something, I experience something, somebody says something in the chat, I am down here, and you guys, you see me right at the bottom there. I write me a quick note. Of course, you know how to write without looking at it. It may be a little, scratchy, but you can read it. So I'm writing my notes, and that's how I review it. Right before this stream tonight, Stephen was showing us an example of some different lower thirds. I knew it was out of vMix, I just didn't know where. So I asked Stephen, I said, where is it at? What is the name of that file? He told me, so what did I do? I wrote it down. It is now sitting on my desk, and tomorrow when I'm prepping for the show, I'm going to implement that lower third. It becomes a small thing. Now, here's the deal. And please listen to me on this one, because we commit to doing this every Thursday night because we want to help you grow, because helping you grow helps us grow. This is not, sure, we've got experience, and these guys have way more experience than I do, but I'm learning and I'm a quick learner. But, we're making some inroads and making some headways that are going pretty good. And we want to all grow together. We're a big broadcasting family here. It's fantastic. We want to be an encouragement to you. We want to teach. We want to learn from you. But here's the deal. Why are you streaming? Why? Because you want to grow. You have something you want to share. And I'm here to tell you, Marty was 100% right. You can fly by the seat of your pants if you want to. You can just flip your camera on, put your hat on backwards, put your headphones on like you're some gaming streamer, and maybe 1 in a million will get lucky and start grabbing an audience and followers. But 99.9% are going to be, trying to have a polite word here, unsuccessful. I didn't want to use the word failure. Unsuccessful in your endeavor.
What will happen? I think that's where it all comes from. You got to know your why. I mean, I love Simon Sinek, who has that book, Start With Why. I've said it many times. We all crave purpose, identity, security, and acceptance. And I love the way you said that, Greg, that what is your life message? What is it that you're trying to communicate to the world? I mean, there are people like me who never met a microphone they didn't like. My best friend tells me I'll find a stage pretty much anywhere we go. But at the same time, it's not just about the fact you like being around lights and mics and cameras. there's something greater in there for you, and you got to really kind of figure out what that looks like, and then what do you do with that. But Greg, I have a running Evernote file of vMix tips and things that I've learned. Oh, this is where I had a mistake last week. Make sure I do this, and how do I set my triggers, and I save code there and things like that. And what that does is that gives me the ability to keep my notepad here, and then I just put important stuff on it like donuts. It works perfectly.
And
Evernote saved today.
And the thing is, I saw you writing. I knew you were writing something down. But here's the deal, guys. And I think everybody's going to agree with this. And Stephen, I'll throw it back to you. But here's the deal. I started streaming out of necessity coming out of COVID-19. I was unable to travel. Started a little Facebook group. Then it started growing. Next thing you know, Stephen and I connect. And Stephen says, hey, man, I like what you're doing here. You can deliver content. Let me help you on the production side. Stephen started, honestly, blessing me with equipment. Lights here, camera there, and, started teaching me the backside. I can handle the content side. He was teaching me the production side. We've developed that friendship. Now then I went to YouTube. It continued to grow. Then another Facebook group. It's continued to grow. And from day one, I wanted to be as professional, and I wanted to have the greatest content experience, interactive experience as possible. Had no idea where it would go. About 6 to 8 weeks ago, I got a phone call from Integrity Television. They said, hey, I'm a vice president for Integrity Television. Somebody shared your stream to me. We've been watching what you do. We like it. Keep doing it. We may call you back. About 4 weeks passed. Got another phone call. Well, how would you like to have access to 54 million subscribers? I said, excuse me? How would you like to have access to 54 million subscribers? We'd like to offer you 2 time slots a week. I said, what? Why? Because even when I had 5 viewers on Facebook, I was treating it as if I had 5 million. And then the opportunity unfolded. It doesn't matter if you have 0 viewers or 1 million, your product is still the same. If that's not where you want to be, just film yourself and watch it. But if you really want to get your life message out there, or what you feel, a calling to share through the broadcast medium, give it your best every day.
No, I agree with that. And, we talk about, I know you guys joke around with me all the time and saying, like, I push all these buttons and things. But I do have I have my fair share of cheat sheets. Like, we joke about this on a Friday. For those that watch the Friday show know, I pretend that this is Glenn's contract. But this is actually a typewritten document that I keep handy, as well as my notes on the back. Because I can't remember every input on the back of my SDI router, back when I was using that, religiously, right? I couldn't, okay, so just to give you, input 1 goes to output 13, 15, and 19, okay? And then I have other notes that go, okay, source 2 goes to 14, but 14 is also routed back into input number 7, which then goes out to 17. Even I know my stuff, but that's, over the top. So, well, like what you're saying, I actually need to do that, a notepad and paper, because normally I keep it in my head, and then I go, at the end of the show, I go, oh, darn, what was that I had to change? So I really like, because I started to do that, like I said, with the technical stuff, but I think with the content, I think I need to start putting some of that stuff down, because I tend to forget. Somebody makes a good point, and I forget the tail off of that.
And Stephen, you're a pro, okay? You are a pro. I mean,
I just play one on TV.
You're a phenomenal producer. And even you are saying, I need a cheat sheet. I have a cheat sheet here.
For certain things, yes. You have to.
If you're not growing and learning and keeping stuff and trying to get better, you're going to stay where you're at. Mm-hmm. Going to stay where you're at. Always push for more.
Well, I think
I'll add this, Stephen, before you go. You're a great example, and what you just said was very, very important. Especially people just starting out. I just want to throw something out there. I remember talking to Mark Rogers about this. You never stop. You might get to a point where you could do a competent show. You get the basics down in streaming, get the lights set up, you get your camera, you get your mic and all that. You get a nice foundation going. But if you really want to continue to, it's going to always be a building process. And Stephen, you've been doing this a long time, and we still talk about this all the time. What can we build? What can you improve? Not only that, just in technique, and can always get better. But in today's world, what's great about this stuff is there's so many advances in production, in technique, in tools. There's always something new, and it's exciting to be out there. But you have to be in a kind of like a framework of learning all the time, and it never stops. And that's why I always say, have a goal, but enjoy getting there, enjoy the journey, because that's really what it's all about. It's like you should be doing this because you love it, and that's where you really get. It's not getting to whatever goal you have, because there's always another mountaintop to climb, but it's the journey. That's what I like about this. I'm fortunate enough to be able to do media, and all of us. I mean, I know, Jeff, you do it professionally. Greg, you have all your stuff you're doing. Stephen, you're involved in this professionally. We get to do it for a profession and for our job. I do this full time, and it's great. I love, and I'm so thankful and blessed to be able to do this, and something I really love to do. And I tell my wife Misty all the time, it's like, I can't believe I get to do this for pay and for my job, But I'm always in that mindset of learning something. I'm always like, what's this new thing? How can I make it better? This is really cool. I'm always looking forward to it, and it's just a great time. I love that. I hope it never, and it really will never stop. But just getting the mind, realize that that's the focus, that's the fun, And
Yeah.
go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was gonna say, but that's why we do a show like this, is for the people that want to monetize off of this, right? People that want to do this for a living at the Highland, like, not just the content, not just the gear, but if you're looking to do this, you have to up your game. You got to stand out. I mean, Jeff, 2-time Emmy Award winner, you didn't get that way by just picking up, a camera one day and just said, okay, I'm going to submit this to the Emmys. No, you had to learn all this stuff. I mean, it took years, right?
There's definitely a journey there. It was the first time I had entered was in 2020. But, I started in 7th grade, 1979, staying after school from 3 to 4 p.m. with a black and white reel-to-reel VHS machine. And I played with that camera for months and months and months, developed a love for it. And you're right, you've got to work your way through your own journey, but at some point things begin working for you, and that magic begins to happen really well. And I would just end it with this, Steve. Community is everything, right? Nobody likes working in isolation in the shadows. So find those people around you that love what you're doing or love live streaming. Create your own private Facebook group if you need to, but find a way to share and work out those things together. And last thing, I pulled this out here, and I don't know if anybody can see it, but real quick, if you have trouble remembering things, these label makers from Brother are $60, and you can literally make stickers for every part of your room if you're trying to figure out what TV goes with what remote or anything like that. So anything you can do to make it easy to understand and keep you on track is the right move.
Well, and I want to show this real quick because I was talking to the guys earlier because, well, why not? I can do it, so let's do it. We want to have a guy on in the future. His name's Joe DeMax. He is the owner of Central Control, and it is an application that allows you to control multiple devices. So one of the things I said to Joe, I'm going to stand up here. One of them, I said, I put my old TriCaster Surface back here, my old X keys, because now with Central Control, I don't need to use them. So I was like, Joe, it'd be really cool if we could light these up, just to have it for aesthetics when the camera's on it. And he goes, what would be even cooler is if you could control your other TriCaster controller with that. And he goes, that's interesting. He goes, let's try it. So we did. So now I can actually stand back here and actually switch shots. I can switch to Jeff or Greg. I can just simply click on here. So here, let's go to Greg. and I'll do it from back here. And I can even throw up his lower third from back here. I can pull it off. And and you might say, well, why would you want to do that? I mean, I could set up a different shot, just have somebody, have these guys up here on the screen and talk to them. But I didn't want to just take it and just say, okay, well, that's cool. I can control my main production here. I wanted to be able to say, okay, let's take it to the next level. Let's take it to a level that most people haven't thought about and not just have decorative background. I showed it to Marty. I called him up and Greg, and I was like, you guys got to check this out. Because it opens up a new world. And so we want to have Joe on in the future to kind of talk to you guys about this. And he worked with me yesterday because I was spitballing ideas, and he's like, well, let's try it. Yeah, that should work. Let's do it. It changes your production. It allowed me to get rid of a whole full controller out of my workflow and make things simpler. So if you haven't checked it out, $50, centralcontrol.io is the website. If you're running multiple devices or multiple switchers, vMix, TriCaster, I run a bunch of them, so having the ability to control OBS over there, TriCaster here, vMix over there with one button, one controller, a win for me. So guys watching this, you definitely want to, and I think we'd have a good opportunity to talk to him about our different workflows to see how that could institute, especially you, Jeff, with the X32 and then controlling vMix at the same time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there are a number of ways to do it, but central control is definitely a player for sure. A good option. And, you're right. If you've got buttons, I mean, most of the controllers we all buy, even if you buy a MIDI controller, they have 50 or 60 or 100 buttons on them. You might end up using 10 of them anyway, right? So buying a Stream Deck, which is what I think you're probably working from there,
yep,
with the smaller interface, it really makes things clear, and it makes it really easy to put on a good show.
Yeah, so if you guys want to check it out, he does have a 30-day full-fledged free demo here. But again, you want to step it up to the next level, make your life a little bit easier. The funny thing about this, guys, and we'll wrap it up, is that Joe used to watch this show. I've known Joe since he was 14 years old, and now I think he's 25 or 26. So he watched this show, got into broadcasting back when I did Broadcast Now. I mean, he was doing other stuff. He interned with New Tech, went on to develop this application, and again, he wanted to make it professional. He wanted to do things that, like he said to me the other day, if we would have had this 10 years ago, 12 years ago, our life would have been so much easier. So there's a testament for a guy that wanted to take it to the next level, and he did. So on that note, Jeff Fitzgerald, it was great to have you again.
Hey, it's always awesome to be here, bud. You know that.
Love having this guy here. Also, Clucky Ducky, we love having him.
Rubber Ducky, you're so much fun. I think that's from Sesame Street. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's been an awesome night. Blessings to you, Jeff, Marty, and Steven.
Also, you have a comment here from Camo. He says, Greg has the voice and presence, the look of a pro broadcaster. I'm sure that's not by accident.
You, Camo. Jeff gave one little last comment, and I'll give my last final comment. But here, if you're trying to grow and you're trying to discover the small things, have somebody in your stream. This just popped in my head because I have one that can look at your little things that you're doing during your stream and be able to give you critical commentary to help you grow and get better. For me, it's my wife. She's always watching. She's downstairs. My studio's 13 feet above South Mercer Street here in Pennsylvania, and it's just a tagline I use. But she is the one that's always watching for camera angles, videos I'm doing, tempo, Camo, and it was off of what you just said, but or wrote there, but it's even the tempo and how I'm talking. And if my tempo gets out of whack or I'm getting off or I get going down a bunny trail, we have code words that are in my chat, and my wife will pop it in, and I'll see her code word, and it triggers me, get my tempo back on. All these little things, the small things, help you get better.
Check him out every Tuesday and Friday night, youtube.com/Greg Terry Experience. If you want to check him out live, as well as Integrity Television. Also, Mr. Marty McPadden from podjam.tv. If you're looking for a producer for video or basically anything, get in contact.
Yeah, video, audio. I do want to second what Greg said, second the motion on what he said, and especially on a shower curtain. I got to up my shower curtain game. He's got me beat. I don't know what I'm going to do next week. So I got a lot,
Well,
lot to work on.
If they go with you, if they use your services, do they get a free shower curtain?
I think I might have to offer that as a little premium. I don't know. You know, I got the wheels are spinning up there, so we'll see.
Bring your own shower curtain, guys. Really appreciate you. This was the first show on the new equipment. Everything's worked flawless because of all the little things that we did in advance. So I hope you guys watch this and take away what everybody had to say today, because it's going to help your production, and we really appreciate it. For those that are wanting to tune in, tomorrow is the Retro Buzz, 6 p.m. Eastern. We will get into Retro Arcade, and then when you're done, you can just go right over and watch Greg's show and, you know, have a fun-filled night of entertainment in live professional broadcasts. Till next time, keep it buzzing.